Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you here on One Bills Live. Pleased to be joined now by ESPN NFL analyst Louis Riddick here, who is going to be part of ESPN's Back Together Saturday coverage on Saturday as training camp is going to be in full force by then. It kind of gets started midweek around the league, but you guys will be all over it on the ESPN side of things. So, Louis, thanks for making some time for us on what's going to shape up to be a really busy week really fast for you.
Yeah, man. I mean, we were talking about it. The dead period between the end of mini camps and then the start of training camp is just the worst time of year in the world for all of us who are just fanatical football fans. This is the best time. This is like Christmas month. This is like December. And now you're just waiting for Christmas Day when we kick off week one. How cool is that, though?
Yeah, we've been sitting up here in Buffalo. It's been a different kind of off season for the Bills because of the turnover on the defensive side, the loss of some really big names, some household names. What is your take on refurbishing really not really the young core of people, but kind of refurbishing the energy and the roster with some younger, more athletic guys, saying goodbye to some guys you love and respect, but trying to get younger and more fit?
Look, I think these are exciting times, maybe not for the fan base. Heck, maybe not even for some coaches because of the fact that they, when they're dealing with known commodities, so to speak, and I hate calling players commodities, but when they're dealing with known commodities for so long, they kind of like, you almost find this comfort zone when at this time of year where, you know exactly what to expect. Guys know what to expect. So you kind of hit the ground running, and it's, you kind of get up to speed quickly, making sure you just keep your team healthy, and you kind of know what to expect come week one, because there's a lot of just like proven players within your system, your culture, and so it's just kind of business as usual. These kind of seasons can kind of go one of two ways, right? I mean, there's obviously going to be a little bit of angst, anticipation about like how do some of these new young faces who aren't really indoctrinated into the Bills culture, how are they going to respond once now training camp really starts to ramp up, and then as we start moving towards week one, and then as we start playing games, how are these guys going to really, adapt to our culture and adapt to the expectations that we have, up there in Buffalo in particular, which is competing for titles in the East and trying to get to the title game and slay that dragon, get back to the Super Bowl. So but the cool thing is, like, they've drafted guys who have come from successful programs, who have been highly successful players, who are tremendously talented. And I think Brandon and Sean, in the group up there really are, I think, probably going into this season with a lot of like positive anticipation and being very hopeful that, look, we're going to attack this season with some of the unknowns in a very positive way. We've drafted good players. We know how to develop players. We know how to coach winning football. And look, I personally, I've written about a couple of these guys, who were brought onto this football team, especially on the offensive side of the football. Look, I'm a big Keon Coleman guy. I'm a big Ray Davis guy. On the defensive side, I'm a huge DeWayne Carter. I think DeWayne Carter is one of the people that, when you look at the draft overall, how many people know of a defensive tackle / DN swing player from Duke who could wind up being an 8 to 10 sack guy if he hit right, if he plays his cards right and gets a couple of breaks falling his way? I mean, that's exciting to me. So I would assume it's exciting to the people inside the building up there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put a player comparison on DeWayne Carter, but it's hard not to get some Kyle Williams vibes from him, just seeing what he's been able to do through the course of the spring. Just a guy who knows it right from the jump and might be 23 years old, but plays like a 32-year-old vet that's been in the league for 10 years. I don't know what it is, and I know he comes from a big-time football family. He's got, bloodlines that go pretty deep all the way back to his grandfather. But he flashed early here, and it was hard not to think of how quickly Kyle Williams flashed when he got onto the scene here back in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, his tape was spectacular. It really was. From one, positional versatility. Obviously, I think he's a better 3 technique than he is a 9 technique. I think he plays with tremendous leverage, great hand use, great a great feel for leverage, set points of offensive guards, power, quarterback awareness in the pocket. He's got all those kinds of things, all of those. And, and that's reminiscent of a guy like Kyle Williams, like you're talking about. And look, they need that. They needed this infusion of youth and versatility that comes from a guy like that. And when you think of like that combination of what him and Ed could do together, because they're a little bit different, but they on the inside, just think of the kind of things they could do in a 4-down front in sub packages when it's like 3rd and 7. What these kind of two dudes can do, how disruptive they can be. I know Sean has just got to be licking his chops, sitting there going, man, I mean, that's what we're looking for. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for. Look, obviously in the secondary, there's gonna be some things that they're gonna have to iron out, and that's really Sean's forte. I mean, that's what he coached when I was with him in Philadelphia, along with linebackers as well. But I mean, that the secondary is going to be one where that's where he's going to have to go to work. It'll be interesting to see what Cole Bishop does. I was someone who had some questions about him in the draft, not from an athletic standpoint, but just from a functional playing perspective standpoint, and how he sees the game, how he processes the game. But again, these are all exciting things, man. And like I said, going back to the offense, and I know I'm going back and forth here only because, I spend all spring looking at some of these young guys, and I know there's a lot of talk about Keon and about whether or not is he a true number one outside lane winner. And Steve, you know what it takes to play out there. You know what it means. And I remember Devontae Adams telling me last year or 2 years ago, he said, look, a true number one, he believes elite wide receiver in the NFL is a guy who, when it's 3rd and 8, can he line up outside the numbers? When he's got and the sideline's not his friend, can he still win? And Keon Coleman showed at Florida State he can win. And he can win because he's a high riser and he's a former basketball player and got great tracking skills. That sounds like a Buffalo wire. That sounds like what Josh Allen would love to have. So I'm fired up about it, about all the guys that they drafted this year. I thought Brandon did a great job.
Yeah, one of the things about it has been the headline. Keon Coleman coming out, the first pick of the 2nd round. The Bills trade back twice to get him. And everybody says, well, he's got to replace Steph Diggs. He's got to replace. But the thing about it really is, from the team's perspective, they got to replace Diggs and Davis. Diggs, 107 catches, almost 1,200 yards. That's a big number. But yep. Davis, not so much. He had 45 catches. So you're talking about two guys that had 152 catches between them, almost 2,000 yards, just shy of 2,000 yards. So you're talking about two guys to replace those two guys of getting 76 catches and just under 1,000 yards. That doesn't seem quite so insurmountable. Even when you sprinkle in the targets aren't going away. Somebody's going to get the targets. They're not going to throw the ball 150 times less than they did last year. They're going to throw that ball to somebody. And Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins, Khalil Shakir, Chase Claypool, all these guys that are vying for those two spots, they really have to fall off a cliff not to be able to get in there and give them some production back, correct?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And, I mean, the guys who you didn't mention, who you know for sure are going to be focal points in this offense. When I think back about the old Indianapolis Colts when they were a 12 personnel-centric offense.
Right.
And Dallas Clark was the dude back in those days. I mean, that just to me sounds like something that's just setting up for the Dalton Kincaid show to really burst onto the scene this year. For him to really be that guy that puts defenses in a bind going, do we play you in base or do we move the sub? If we move the sub, you're going to run the football. If we play you in base, you're going to torture our linebackers, and really gives them, some, with being simple, making it more difficult for defenses. And I'm hoping that, that he's someone who really does burst onto the scene. James Cook, Ray Davis, those two guys as a 1-2 punch in the backfield. You're right. Maybe they don't throw the ball 100+ times less, but I would think because of what James showed as a multifaceted back, and because of what Ray has showed at Kentucky of being a multifaceted run-in pass threat back, that those guys also, like maybe the offense kind of changes and morphs a little bit to where it really is like all hands on deck, maybe we simplified a little bit. Maybe we're not as spread out as before. Maybe it's this, it's not just Josh sitting back here, picking you apart in the passing game, but maybe it's a little bit more between the numbers centric, where these tight ends and these backs are just going to bludgeon you. And I personally kind of like that attack. I kind of like that approach, because these guys are studs. I mean, James, I would assume James has won over a lot of people up there with what he can do. And Ray Davis, you won't find a person who ever competed against him in the SEC or otherwise say a bad thing about him as a person, or I'll tell you what, as a player, as someone who can just absolutely rip you. And so it'll be cool to see this offense kind of take shape and what it really looks like. And really, in the end, look, we all know what the engine is here. We all know who it is.
Right.
And look, Josh is someone who, it's wild to me. Like I know one of my colleagues, Jeremy Fowler, he does a great piece on, but it uses a lot of anonymous quotes from GMs and scouts, and some of the things some GM or some scout was saying about Josh. It's just like, how it is with high-end athletes, man, always looking for something to kind of spur them on and get them motivated and want to reach higher levels. Well, some of the crap that was being said about him, about being a one-read player, can't win at the line of scrimmage, locks on the targets. I'm sitting there going, Josh Allen is about to rip people this year. Again.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I can't wait.
Yeah. So, Louis, let's take it a step further with respect to the offense and move to Joe Brady, because he takes over midseason last year, and some people were surprised by this, but the team over those last 9 games goes 52% run, 48% pass. I mean, they really leaned on the run game. And the big question now going forward, Louis, is, was he just managing an offense that was in a little bit of a crisis when he took over? Or is this going to be more a part of what this offense looks like? Maybe not 52% run, but are we going to see the run kind of infiltrate the play calling a little bit more under Joe Brady going forward? Condensed formations are a hot thing now. Is that where he takes advantage of the tight ends? Just give us your take on what you think we should expect from Joe Brady going forward here.
I would, without a doubt, 100% expect more of that. And I don't think this is just Joe Brady managing what he had to work with and putting his spin on it, solely his spin. And I say that, and I can say that with probably close to 100% certainty based on some of the conversations that I know we had as a crew when talking to Sean McDermott for some production meetings and games that we've televised at Buffalo going back 2-3 years. Which is, look, he's always wanted to have that part of Buffalo's identity on offense, that being the hard-nosed, come off the ball, capture the line of scrimmage, be able to bludgeon teams, be able to kind of soften them up, bring safeties down, throw the ball over the top, because of the fact that the running game is a focal point of the offense. He always wanted that to be a part of their identity. And for whatever reason, under previous coordinators, and I'm not saying it's the coordinator, so I'm just saying for whatever reason, it always seemed to fall back on, this is Josh, it's throwing the ball to Steph, it's throwing the ball to Gabe, we're spreading them out. If it's not there, Josh is going to use his legs, he's going to be a dual threat. And the running game per se, in a traditional sense, meaning the running back carrying the ball, was just not a part of really who they were from a true identity standpoint. And I think what you saw last year is maybe exactly where, I don't know if it's exactly the ratio that Sean is looking for. I can't say that without having asked him, but that felt more like what ideally he had envisioned, which is, I really do want to be a physical football team on offense. I want our offensive line, and you've seen the kind of things that they've been trying to do to develop that kind of identity and that kind of reputation along the offensive line. He wanted guys who were nasty. He wanted guys who would knock people off the ball, who would treat people with disrespect, so to speak. You saw that last year a little bit. Well, no, actually, you saw it a lot. You saw how they treated Dallas. That's what he wants. He wants to be able to do that to your front seven. Yeah. And then, because when you can do that, it's over. Josh is going to go crazy. He's going to go crazy throwing the football.
Yeah.
So I think that's where they want to get to.
Yeah, I think no question. Their offensive line, we made the point here, their offensive line was one of the only ones, maybe the only one in all of pro football that stayed together. The same 5 guys took every snap of the regular season. They didn't miss any snaps. That gives you some continuity, and plus it also proves how effective you can be. And in that last 2 months of the season when they were in must-win, and they just took over up front. And it seems here from our end of it, with Van Pran Granger being drafted, McGovern moving down to, they've got even bigger and more athletic down inside for that offensive line to be even more physical. Plus, and I want to say this, it's a phenomenon that's really unique to Buffalo because of Josh. People outside of Buffalo, and this was also the narrative that followed Josh after the Jet game opening day last year when he threw the 3 interceptions and they were deep and all that. People say Josh turns it over too much. Josh turns it over too much, and people in Buffalo are like, "Oh no, he doesn't, because he scores enough." And the narrative here in Buffalo is we don't care. He scores more touchdowns than anybody. Put the ball out there and do it. But if you're going to run the ball 52% of the time or a higher percentage of the time, that does take away a couple of opportunities where Josh has to put it up for grabs or do all of that stuff. This kind of offense with a 2 tight end, the condensed formations, and the 12 personnel, and the Shakir in the slot, and Cook carrying the ball, and Kincaid, all of a sudden, they don't have to throw the 15-yard dig route on the backside to make a first down. And so the turnovers naturally come down.
Yeah. I mean, you know, every coach, the very first thing they're going to tell you when you ask them what's the key to winning in the NFL, they're going to say turnover differential. They're just going to say that. I don't care. Every coach is on autopilot to answer the question that way. And it's true. There's a direct correlation. It's true. It's not like they're lying. So I think taking some of the pressure off of Josh having to make riskier decisions, throws that aren't really high percentage throws because either you're behind the sticks, you become one-dimensional, teams are starting to flood zones, flood areas that they know you want to attack, making it even harder for him. I mean, those are the things that he wants, that every coach is trying to, lessen the burden on those situations for their quarterback. I don't care how good they are. And I think that's all that Sean's trying to do. That's all that Joe Brady is trying to do, is trying to find ways for them to be even more efficient without there being a noticeable drop-off in the ultimate statistic, which is scoring points, which is what everybody, we know. It's a point-scoring business. And, honestly, along those lines, I'll say this too. A college coach told me this year, and I think this is true in football overall, Steve, and that is they believe that wide receiver surpassed pass rusher as the second most important position in the game of football in today's game, outside of quarterback, because of everything that wide receivers do, which is, one, they can flip the field, win a game for you on one play. Okay, they put people in the seats. We know that football is a big business because people want to see points scored, and they don't want to see it scored going, gain of 3, gain of 4, gain of 5, first down. They want to see the 60, 70-yard touchdowns. And 3, they bring in other players to your football team. When you have a high-flying offense that can put points on the board, and they're doing it in dramatic fashion, free agents want to come, recruits want to come in college and all. So I understand the importance of the passing game. And I'm not saying that Josh's role and his ability to push the ball down the field is ever going to be something that's de-emphasized. But I think what you saw with Buffalo in the second half of the year, I think is more in the vision of what Sean wants. And ultimately, I think it could be one of those things that, knock on wood, this offensive line stays healthy again, can propel them, can help them take another step. Because all the teams that are playing January football, what do we talk about in the media every year come January? Offensive line play. Can they run the football? Can defenses stop from getting bludgeoned? It always matters at that time of year. People don't like talking about it September, October, and November, and in the offseason. But then come January, when their teams suck on the offensive line or can't stop anybody against the run, then all of a sudden they care. Then they care. That's why I think they're doing this the right way. hopefully it turns out and manifests itself in more postseason wins for them.
Louis, enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for joining us. Have fun this weekend on Back Together Saturday on ESPN.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys.